In 1966, Leigh Mosley was singing with the New World Singers. Now that's a group that from time to time would perform with renowned songstress Roberta Flack. After finishing a publicity photo session, a photographer introduced her to the darkroom process. Watching the pictures develop right before her eyes was magical. Now 50 years later, she is still hooked.
My first job was at the Washington Daily News, which has been defunct for years. I think it collapsed in the early 70s or late 60s. I was writing stories about stuff I cared really nothing about. And the guys who were the photographers just used to laugh and say, oh, you'll never be a photographer, because there were so few black women photographers, or women photographers, period, but especially black ones. But I persisted. I was the first black woman that was hired by the Washington Post in 1974. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed going out, you know, doing the assignment, getting back. You had to process the film after you shot it, get it back. It was like a kind of a pressure, it was a rush, trying to get everything done and meet those deadlines. Some of my photographs have appeared in The Village Voice, Ms. Magazine, Essence Magazine, and I love working for Essence and I love working for The Village Voice. The Village Voice I enjoyed because the assignments were varied and exciting. One in particular I remember was about some skinheads over in this huge park, and I was so scared. I wanted to go home. I didn't want to take any pictures, but it was interesting at the same time. Essence I liked because I was able to take some of my students, because the entire time that I was being a photographer, I was also a teacher. And one of my big things was to make sure that I pass along the skills that I learned to children, particularly in Washington, D.C.'s public schools. And so I would take children with me on my assignments so they could see what it's like to work with a working pro. Some of my most interesting subjects have been Alice Walker, Muhammad Ali, who I thought was extremely handsome. He's the most handsome man that I ever saw in my life, and I just couldn't get over it. Audre Lorde at her home with her family. The picture behind me, I didn't know I was taking a great shot at the time. It was one of those magic moments. I was jockeying for position so that I could get to where I could see Coretta Scott King and Miss Parks. And the other people were just there because I had to use a wide-angle lens, so I couldn't crop it so much. After I looked at my contact sheet, you know, I saw it, I said, wow, look at that. And so I went and blew it up, and then I knew it was classic. The title of it is, What is Coretta Scott King Thinking? Because she looks so pensive. A good photograph to me is something that essentially moves me, even if it's a still life. Mostly I like to photograph people, but it could be anything. It's something that just speaks to me through the color, through the composition, through the balance. Technology has changed or impacted my work because now I'm creating. I'm more of a creator as opposed to a recorder. Recently, I made a piece that was based on a photograph that I took in 1970s, maybe. It was a black and white photograph. It's called Nini's Homework. And what I did was I manipulated that print in Photoshop, and I added some old newspapers that I had from the 60s from the Black Panther Party. I don't think of myself as a trailblazer, quote unquote. I do think about myself as a person who's been what we might call a power of example. When I used to go to work as a teacher, I felt like because I was much older than most of the other people, they were so much younger, but they could see that, well, all old people don't have to be, you know, dragging around, not listless, sick, not interested in anything that's technical. No, this person here is teaching me how to use the computer, how to use the software, how to use the cameras. I don't think my technique has changed. I know my back is a lot happier because I don't have to carry as many cameras and lenses and rolls of film and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, now I carry a card on a chip as opposed to 20 rolls of film. And I think that's terrific. You can't beat that with a stick. One of the things that I'm working on right now is having a 50-year retrospective of my work. It's a little difficult to get a theme for the show because in a half a century I've covered so much stuff. Words of wisdom for the future young people, or not so young people. Follow your heart. Be true to yourself. Do what interests you, because you can't go wrong with that. Life hasn't always been a bowl of cherries, but I've been happy a lot. And a big part of that is due to the fact that I did what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a photographer. I wanted to be an artist, and that's what I did.